Today on Women of Faith in Leadership, we're joined by a woman whose message I believe so many leaders need to hear, especially in this season. Carolon Donnally is a burnout prevention specialist and speaker who equips women of faith in leadership to break free from the cycle of overwork, exhaustion, and constantly feeling like they have to carry more than they should. With a background as a former federal leader and head of leadership coaching at the IRS, Carolon brings both deep leadership experience and powerful personal insight into what burnout really looks like, not just on the surface, but what's happening underneath. In this conversation, we talk honestly about the hidden signs of burnout, the pattern that quietly leads us there, and why so many capable, high-achieving women find themselves exhausted even when they love what they do. We also unpack what it looks like to lead differently, with boundaries, with wisdom, and with an identity rooted in Christ rather than performance. This conversation is honest, eye-opening, and deeply freeing. I'm so grateful you're here, and I hope you enjoy this conversation. Let's dive in. Do you wish that you could lead your team in a way that honors and glorifies God? Are you struggling to overcome self-doubt as a leader and have a desire to be more confident in your role? Welcome to the Women of Faith in Leadership podcast. I'm Rika, and for the last decade, I've experienced my fair share of managing challenging employees and teams in middle management leadership roles. I committed my leadership journey to God, and it changed everything. And I'm ready to share everything I've learned with you. Now, if you're ready to lead your team in a way that honors God, grab that notebook and pen, and don't forget your chai latte, and let's dive in. Welcome, Carolon, to the Women of Faith in Leadership podcast. How are you today?
I am great. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Oh, it's such a big pleasure. And we already had such an amazing pre-interview pre-podcast episode discussion. I think if I didn't say let's start, we would probably still be talking now.
Yeah, indeed.
So why don't you tell the listeners who you are, why are you here today? And yeah, let's kick this off.
Awesome. So, like Rika said, my name is Carolon Donnally, and I am a burnout prevention strategist, and I specialize in helping individuals with burnout to be able to recover from burnout, and also I help organizations who have burnout challenges to be able to navigate those challenges well and find specific strategies for that. So that's what I do, both the individuals and organizations.
It's very interesting that you help organizations. I've not heard that part of that, so we're definitely going to jump into that a little bit. But How did you get to where you are right now to become this burnout strategist and coach? What happened for you to be able to do that?
Yeah, so I experienced burnout a couple of different times in my career. And I would say that the very first time that I experienced burnout, I was fresh out of college and had taken an amazing role at a bank and had rose through the ranks, became a leader. I had people that were reporting to me, all of the things. I thought that I had absolutely made it. And I quickly kind of came to a realization that the role that I was in actually wasn't even suited for me. It wasn't suited for the things that I was good at and all of those things. And I burnt out pretty quickly in that particular role. And it took me a year and a half to recover from that particular burnout. And so I kind of understood burnout at that point. I thought that I did, and I thought that I was going to do the right things. And so I jumped into a new career. And again, felt like I just needed a new job. It's all the things that you hear, right? I just need a new job. And that will fix it. And so I jumped into a new career, and this time I was working for the U.S. federal government, working in their Internal Revenue Service, which is the tax kind of arm of the U.S. government. And I loved my job. Right, which is again a telltale sign that there will be trouble. I loved my job, loved the things, that I did, and so worked really, really hard, and then started to kind of feel the pangs of burnout again. But this time I had some different strategies that made it possible for me to kind of do some different things. And so at the IRS, I was the head of coaching for the entire organization, as well as at the time, I was also doing some organizational development kind of things that allowed me to understand organizational culture. And so, from that lens of both understanding the coaching side of things and what leaders were navigating as it related to burnout, and also having the understanding of the systems part of things and the organizational piece,
Mm,
that's kind of
mm,
what informs my thinking about burnout. And then my love for the work kind of came out of my experience and what I felt like I needed. So,
mm. Okay. Yeah, and it's interesting because the I experienced burnout a couple of times as well. It's like it's just as if we don't learn that first time, and I
mhm.
think it's because we don't quite realize the long-term effect that burnout can actually have on us.
Yeah,
Because the first time I experienced burnout, I knew that I was at breaking point. That's how I felt like I was at breaking point, but I didn't see it as work burnout. I rather just saw it as I'm incapable of managing what I have at the moment, right? And
yeah,
we come up with all sorts of excuses to say that whatever we're going through at the moment, it's actually fine. I just need a holiday. Um, and at that point in time, I did. I took a 3 week holiday, was very refreshed when I came back, but just like that, just plummeted downhill. So, my question to you is because you said, that very first time when you experienced burnout, you were actually still quite young, and the role was actually not suited for you. But what were some telltale signs that you were suffering from burnout, but you actually didn't even realize it? If I hope that
yeah.
question makes sense.
Yeah, no, it absolutely does. I think that one of the telltale signs was the fact that I was having all of these like gastrointestinal issues, right?
Interesting. Yeah. So physical.
Uh, yeah, all of the physical kinds of signs. My brain was not working,
Mhm.
meaning that I would go to try to do a project, and I could not. My head just was not clear. I couldn't seem to concentrate. I was having sleep issues, all kinds of things. The burnout got so bad, right? Because what people don't realize is that. Oftentimes is that there are stages to burnout, right?
Mhm.
And so my burnout got so bad that at the end stage, I was probably at habitual burnout, which is the latter stage of burnout, where at that point I was actually in clinical depression.
Oh, wow.
And so that's one of the reasons why it took the year
Mhm.
and a half to, even be able to recover, and part of it was that I didn't realize that there were certain patterns that I had that created the conditions for which I was easily kind of led down that burnout road, and so, yeah.
Mm. It's interesting that you said about clinical depression, and that was my reaction about that because when I went to go and see a GP, my house doctor, because I just felt like 'cause this was after I had left my job, after I realized that okay, I can't carry on like that. And she also said, burnout is such a tough thing to diagnose
Yeah.
because all of your symptoms could be related to something else. But if you
Yep.
have a look at if you have a look at the bigger picture, and so for me, that was the year after I left my job, I had suffered an ulcer, stomach ulcer. I had bladder and urinary and kidney infection, all
Yep.
within a small space of time, pocket of time. I had I don't even know what else, but that probably 7 months after I left my job, I was basically bedridden. Not all the time, but I felt like most of the time. And that was just my body's way of shutting me down and saying that this is enough. You cannot carry on like this any longer. And to get me treated, she also had to diagnose me with depression,
Yeah.
because otherwise in Australia, you won't get any help mentally,
Mm.
or even, mentally is the main thing if you're not diagnosed with depression. And it's actually interesting, you're the first only other person that I've heard mention that. So can you talk a little bit more into what that looked like for you?
Yeah.
And then I'm just wondering, for the leaders who are listening, when should they go and seek help?
Yeah. For me, it really looked like the the inability to get up out of bed. I remember specifically my parents coming to my house, and getting me out of bed just so I can go take a shower. Like
Mm,
and it was the fact that I was literally crying all of the time, and I thought that that was normal.
mm,
And I remember specifically saying to my mom, one time at the kitchen table, I remember saying to her, I'm trying so hard to be happy. And she said to me, she said, you shouldn't have to try so hard to be happy.
mm,
And it was one of
yeah,
these things where, people often talk about it, and like it's a dark cloud that just seems to never go away, and literally that's what I felt like every single day was the exact same way, and I felt like I would never ever get out of the hole that I was in. And many people didn't realize that that I even had this going on because of the fact that I put on the happy face,
mm,
and right? I put on the happy face and I did all of the things, and I am fine. And I think fine is one of those things that we really need to be mindful of. And so like I would encourage the leaders out there to think about whether or not you are doing that kind of thing. Are you having these conversations inside of your head where you're like, I'm fine, but you know that you are falling apart?
mm,
And the truth of that piece is something that you're not telling anybody. You're kind of, hiding it from people.
mm,
Uh, I would also, you talked about this, but paying attention to those signals that your body is giving you from that place where, like, are you getting to Friday and literally, like, all you can do is get on the couch, and that's about as much as you can
mm,
possibly do. Uh, those are things when the things that used to bring you joy, they feel like a chore, and you are just struggling just to have some semblance of happiness, right?
mm,
Those are things that we really need to be paying attention to. But I really think that that body signal piece is the piece that we kind of blow past, and even being able to get in touch with how are you actually feeling.
mm. And
I rem
sometimes, yeah, sorry, when
No.
don't forget what you want to say, but I want to say, getting in touch with how you feel. That was definitely one of my signals, is the fact that I didn't know how I felt most of the time, couldn't identify it. So yeah, yeah. So you remember a time?
Yeah, no, I was actually going to that exact point. I
Okay.
oftentimes what will happen is that you ask someone how they're feeling, and they will tell you what they think, what's happening inside their mind, but they can't tell you what's inside their body, like how their bodies feel, or what emotions are kind of coming up. And so therefore those are things that I would say. And one last thing I would say, is, being able to pay attention to whether or not you are, being more compassionate towards others than you would be towards yourself. Are
That's
you
an interesting
taking
one.
care of you,
Mm,
or are you just taking care of everybody else?
mm. And I think that's a difficult line for us as leaders. And I think female Christian leaders, because number one, we're very much attached to our emotions.
Mm,
But because that's how God made us. And then if
mhm,
you struggle to be attached to, you feel very attached, detached from your emotion, that's definitely a sign. But also, I think the other thing is that, um, we want to be servant leaders because
Mm.
that's what Jesus was. And quite often we get it so wrong, whereas
Yeah.
we serve others and we nurture others, like you said, but then we just don't even look after ourselves. We just,
Yeah.
forget about me because, in a lot of senses, Jesus was selfless that way. But I
Yeah.
think that we also have to remember that Jesus also withdrew. And even at times when it didn't even make sense to the disciples, he still withdrew. And the disciples didn't see him for days on end sometimes because he knew when he had to step away.
Yeah. And some of the withdrawing that he did was knowing that people needed him, meaning
Mm.
that I remember a particular passage, and I cannot remember where it is exactly, but I remember, I think it was Peter that came to Jesus and said, the people are waiting for you here. And Jesus actually chose to go someplace else.
Yes.
And it's like, am
You're
I
like,
reading that
"Ooh."
correctly? And
Yeah.
so sometimes we are
Oh.
forsaking our own needs in response to everybody else, and God did not call us to do
Mm.
that. And so yeah, and I want to also make an additional point around the fact that one of the things that I learned in this whole thing was this part around work became an idol for me.
Mm.
And I think that that's kind of one of those telltale signs as well.
Mm. Yep. Oh, I agree with you. I've never actually seen it that way. Now that you say it, I definitely idolized my role.
Oh, yeah.
That's one that I knew I felt a level of self-importance, but I never thought about it like I idolized work and I idolized the company that I was working for because they've got such a good name. So if you work for them, it means something, you know?
Oh, yeah.
Interesting, interesting. So you work with companies as well. So I've never heard that part before, and nobody that I've spoken to, usually everybody works with the individuals and not with the companies. So how did that come about?
Because of the fact that all of the research points to the fact that in order for you to actually get at burnout, you have to approach it from both an individual and an organizational perspective. That's
Okay.
that's actually how you actually make inroads into helping with really helping with burnout. And
Mm,
the research actually also points to the fact that when you look at the definition of burnout from the World Health Organization, you know that it's an occupational phenomenon.
mm,
That means it's a workplace phenomenon.
mm,
And so you have to fix some of the things in the workplace in order for you to be able to get at the root causes of burnout. And so because of the fact that I have an organizational consulting background, and I see things in systems, right? I see burnout as a systematic issue. Therefore, we need to be able to help with the organizational systems that contribute to burnout. The
mm,
organizations, they are interested in the work that I do because of the fact that we know that burnout creates turnover. It creates more sick days for people. All of these things.
mm,
It contributes to low productivity, or mistakes that happen. All of these things kind of happen because of the fact that people are burnt out, they don't want to come
mm,
to work, or when they do come to work, they're underperforming, all of this. And so organizations are uh, they are interested in making sure that these are things that don't happen to them. So yeah,
mm.
so that's the organizational piece.
And it is amazing that organizations are getting on board with that because I feel that's a cultural shift as well. Because moving, thinking about organizations, let's say in the 1990s or even early 2000s, companies were still very much like, no, you're a robot. You have to do the work that you have to do, and we kind of don't care about you as an individual. So I entered the workforce early 2000s, but I'm also now
Mhm.
thinking about my mum. So my mum, for example, worked 3 jobs just to after my parents got divorced. So obviously she would have suffered burnout as well at some point in time. And I'm just thinking about how there was a lack of care and a lack of um, compassion for what my mom was going through, and she had to do the work or she would be fired. There was no compassion for the fact that you were a single parent, working 3 jobs. So I always thought my mom did 2 jobs, but she actually enlightened me the other day and said, no, actually honey, it was 3 jobs.
Wow.
So yeah, that's actually crazy. And so I think we've come such a far way. Hey.
Yeah, I think that the vast majority of companies that are interested in the work that I do are looking at it from a sustainability perspective, right?
Mm,
Because we know it costs, sometimes double, triple a
mm,
employee salary to replace them.
yeah.
And so it makes sense from that perspective that especially if you have good employees that you want to keep them and you
Mm,
want to be able to do right by them. But more than that, one of the things that we often don't recognize is sometimes that it is our best employees that are the ones that are at risk for burnout. The ones that
mm,
want to do the right thing. They're your perfectionists. They're your
yeah.
go-to people. Like those are the ones that we should be having conversations with in order for us to be able to see, are how are they really doing? Or are they just
Mm,
simply wearing the mask like I talked about in the beginning?
yeah.
Are they taking on too much or and not telling us and not and we need to really have a conversation about that.
Yeah, it's your yes people, the people who always says yes, I will do it. They
Yep.
always put up their hand, and my husband is like that, and so his work ethic has become known where he is because he's the yes person or the yes guy. But the issue with the yes guy is that they're the ones who their leaders really have to check up on because they're the ones that don't look after themselves. They're the
Yep.
ones who will burn out in the end.
Yeah, very, very true. And I think that oftentimes that conversation is one that doesn't happen very
Mm,
often in organizations, and I think that we need to normalize being able to have those conversations where we are able to ask the question of not just what are you working on, how is it feeling?
mm,
Right? What are the places where it is hard or difficult, or which, we need to be able to do something different? I think sometimes we just assume that people getting it done means that it's coming to them easy, but at
mm,
what cost are you actually getting this done? Are you spending
mm.
nights and weekends and, not seeing your kids, all of the things, but it's getting done. So we need to
Mm,
probe a little bit more around at what cost is this getting done?
mm. And that's actually, oh, that's a phenomenal question because I think all leaders, uh, yeah, anybody listening to this should, that's the number one question that they should ask themselves, but also then obviously of their employees as well, is at what cost are you doing this?
Yeah.
And is there a way that we can delegate this or to somebody where that finds it very easy to do? So, for example, if you would have put me in my company in the marketing or in the finance department, I would have failed miserably at that because it doesn't come easy to me. And because anything language wise, and you think I have my own podcast, so that was a very big leap of faith, and a lot of imposter syndrome because English is my second language, and so that's not going to be something that
Mm.
comes naturally or easy. But put me in the role that I was in my department, and I flourished because I really like that. So yeah, we really need to. Wow, that's a phenomenal question. I'm going to put that in the show notes as well because if your role or if the things that you are saying yes to is costing you, I like that, time with your family, your own mental health, things that are just causing you so much stress, then you maybe have to reevaluate what you say yes to.
Yeah, indeed. And I think that you're also pointing out something that many folks don't think about, right? And it was what led to my first uh, burnout season, I want to say, notice that I said that I wasn't a very good match for the job. And
Interesting.
you're saying the exact same thing because of the fact that we need to evaluate without punishment whether or not the people are able to bring their gifts and talents to the table and be able to do their jobs with a relative level of ease. Now, that doesn't mean that there's not that growth edge and we want people
Mm,
growing, not that. But if the thing that they are doing is taking them an inordinate amount of time, or, it is causing them an inordinate amount of stress, but they're getting it done, we really need to evaluate whether or not that is the right job for them, or
mm,
whether or not some job crafting needs to happen, or whether or not we need to be thinking more strategically around a balance between those things that are the growth edge and also those things that are the places where they're really, these are their gifts, their talents, and they're able to
mm,
flourish. Can we balance that out a little bit better so that they don't feel like they're constantly treading water because they're doing is the stuff that they're
mm,
not good at?
mm. Oh, I've got a brilliant example of that. So, a colleague of mine, so when I worked in the education space for a long time, and so she studied as an educator, and then she had an injury, and then she had to go into administration. And yes, just to say, it was not that great because admin is not her strong suit. But what was her strong suit is education and working with children. And so it's a skill set that she had to learn. And because in and I mean actually I know two people that have done the exact same thing. But this one is specifically that I'm talking about. She actually moved countries, so she studied to be an educator in America, came to Australia, worked as an administrator. And I honestly think she was just in the wrong role. That I don't think that was the role for her. And she moved back to America, so I don't know exactly what she's doing there. But yeah, I just honestly think that that job did not come easy to her, and because of that, there was some significant challenges for us. But she was adamant; she really wanted to do that job. So I think then, if you're so adamant that you want to do that job, then you've got to go and increase your skill set, or maybe I don't know, maybe we need to have a conversation with you,
Yeah.
just saying that okay, yeah, why what's the reasoning behind this? Why are you so adamant that you want to be in that role when
Yeah,
it's not suited
indeed.
for you?
Yeah,
Mm,
indeed. And can they see that the role is not suited for them and where they actually flourish?
yeah, exactly. Because they might think that that's the role that they want to do, but then you need to go and find out, but why? Is it because is the hours better for family, or is it because it looks it looked easy, you saw somebody else doing the job and then you thought, okay, yeah, I can definitely do that. Yeah,
Yeah.
so you really need to go and figure out, because if you're in the wrong job, it is 100% just going to burn you out, but it's also going to stress everybody else out.
Yeah. And I think that it stresses everybody else out. I think that the thing that people don't realize is sometimes burnout is contagious.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And I
definitely.
mean that from the perspective of, like, imagine for a moment that someone on the team is slowly kind of burning out, and,
Yeah.
because of their burnout, it's creating all kinds
Mm.
of
Oh my God.
challenges with
Mm,
communication, challenges with work getting done, et cetera, et cetera. And it creates this crazy ripple effect among team members. And so, for many leaders, we need to also be evaluating whether or not our teams are even burnout resistant, or whether or not the way that they're working together actually creates the conditions for which burnout can actually continue to fester. Can people rely on each other? Is there enough
mm,
psychological safety for me to be able to raise my hand and saying, "Hey, I'm having trouble"? All of those things are factors that we often don't think about, but it
mm.
needs to be thought through.
Yeah, and I think it's our role as leaders is not just to look after ourselves, but our role is to look after our employees. And if
Yeah.
we want to make sure that our team flourishes and actually do have that psychological safety, us as leaders have to put boundaries in place, but then we also have to stick to our own boundaries, right? And that's often the hard thing.
Yeah, that piece with leaders around them setting and keeping their own boundaries is a huge thing. How many
Mm,
times do we say, "Oh, I'll just look at this for another couple minutes and it'll be fine," and a couple minutes turns into an hour or so,
mm.
right?
Yep, yep. And I used to be proud of burning the midnight oil.
Oh,
Midnight used to always be my cutoff. So I would say, yeah, I would say to my husband, okay, I'm just going to work for a little bit while the kids are now in bed. That would be 9 o'clock, and then midnight, I'd be like, oh, I better go to bed now. Um, Not healthy, not
yeah.
healthy at all. Mm,
Yeah, indeed. And I would also say, even with regards to the boundaries piece, how many boundaries are we willing to cross that our people have set? You know
mm,
what I mean? And making our ability to be able to make them a priority as well from the things that are important to them
mm,
is also going to be really super valuable. Meaning that if you know that, the baseball game is really an important thing for them to be able to get at, can you all have a really honest conversation around, hey, I know that this thing is really important to you,
mm,
and we have this deadline that needs to be met. So we need to have a real conversation and be super strategic,
yeah.
about what's actually possible and what's not possible, and who else do we need to have conversations with, like that level of
Mm,
vulnerability, both on their part and your part to bring the things up. All that's really super important as well.
mm. I've actually never thought about it that way. That's a very interesting perspective that you bring about uh, sticking to their boundaries, not just the other way around.
Yeah.
Because I think one thing I've actually never thought about it that way. You just challenged the thought of mine, so that's awesome. Because when I was in my leadership role, we used Microsoft Teams. And I always would, because I worked midnight or sometimes 4 in the morning or whatever, my perspective was always, okay, I'm up at 4 a.m. to get stuff done. So if you don't want to receive messages on Microsoft Teams at 4 a.m., turn your notifications off. And then when you come into work, all the notifications would be there. But and I always thought about it that way, and I probably still till this day thought, again, I stand my point, like if they didn't want to receive messages at 4 a.m., too bad. But what I didn't do is I didn't actually respect their boundaries, because a lot
Yeah.
of people were complaining over that. And a
Hmm.
lot of people were saying, well, that's really not okay. You shouldn't be up at 4 a.m. messaging us, whether not because of me, but because of you. So a lot of them were expressing their concern for me. And I was
Yeah.
just saying, oh, don't worry, that's just the time I work and get stuff done. I would make
Mhm.
excuses for it. So yeah, thanks for challenging that, because I 100% did not respect their boundaries by not messaging them at 4 a.m.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that we as leaders often don't think about is, that modeling of that behavior. You can tell them all you want, put it in an email line, at the bottom of the email that, I'm working when, it's suitable for me. No need for you to respond until it's suitable
Mm,
for you, and blah 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 blah.
yeah.
But they're watching you, and
Yeah.
they are watching what is acceptable at this next level in order for you to be successful. And so, we need to be mindful of that, because of the fact that it's telling them the story of the fact that it might require them to
Mm,
burn the midnight oil, etc. And then we wonder why it is that burnout becomes a perpetual thing in
yeah.
organizations, because they're watching every level of leadership kind of do the same
Do
thing.
that.
And so I would really encourage leaders to be mindful of those messages where they're saying, this is the time that works for me. You don't have to respond,
Mm,
because the reality is that they feel an obligation to respond, and
mm,
that obligation can begin to drive burnout, because it's just that um, it's that stress that it creates, where it's just like, what am I going to come into the office to? How many
yeah.
notifications will I have?
Yeah, and I had one or two colleagues who would now from different departments who would work with me at the same time. So sometimes late at night, myself and one of my department head colleagues would be emailing each other. And
Yeah.
now that I think about it, how unhealthy is that? We're emailing each other at 10 o'clock at night about stuff because
Yeah.
obviously both of us are working. It's obviously a perpetual cycle of if we don't get this work done, then, it's just not going to get done. We've got so much work. And that job that I was in, they never expected us to work that hard, never. But
Mm.
I think it was just innate in the culture of it. If you want to really make a success of your job, and like I said, it was not verbalized. Nobody ever said that. It was not in my contract, but it was like an unwritten rule that
Yep.
if you wanted to make a success of your job, you've got to work late because other
Yeah.
leaders were doing it. So then I was doing it, and it was just normal.
Yeah. And so we know that that then is true, but the opposite is true too. Right? And so
Hmm.
when we begin to set these different cycles and rhythms of the way that we do work and normalizing things like, I am going, I'm going to take off and I'm not going to check email, and you know what I mean, all of these things, and
Mm.
or we say to our people, when you go on vacation, I would like for you to lose my number. I do
Oh,
not want you
interesting.
to call into this meeting that we have scheduled. Do you have
Yeah.
a designated person who can call in, or can your an AI assistant do it and you follow up afterwards? Being super deliberate about making the norm this other way of being, I think,
Yeah.
allows creates permission for people to say, "Oh, huh, I can do that too."
Yeah, exactly, exactly. And now talking about AI, I think that's having AI assistants on Zoom because that's one thing. So sometimes if I've had guests on, their AI assistant would join as well. The AI assistant would be the one making notes so that the person wouldn't have to do that. I had a coaching client once where the leader said to me, I hope you don't mind, but I've just turned on my auto transcribe so that I don't have to, and then the auto transcriber would actually go and summarize it and tell her exactly what it is that she needed to do because we need these systems in place. So yeah, it's actually interesting that AI can also help us in that sense, but I think that we still need to then not play so much catch up afterwards that we feel burnt out again after having a break, right?
Absolutely. And so it's a matter of being able to put some of those processes in place beforehand, that having that as a goal, that we
Mm,
don't want you to come back and feel like you have to, get on the treadmill and run really fast. And
mm,
so what would need to be in place in order for you to both enjoy your holiday and
mm,
also not feel like you're behind the eight ball and need to catch up. And I think even throwing that question to, into our brain allows us to think about possibilities that perhaps we hadn't thought about before.
mm. Yeah, this is such a valuable and a different spin on any of the burnout conversations that I've had. So I'm so glad that we got to do this today.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed.
So where can people connect with you if they want to work with you one on one, or if they want to get you into their organization to help them?
Yeah, so my website is Carolon, Carolon hyphen Donnally, Donnally.com. And there you will find information for if you're an individual or if you are an organization interested in working with me. I'm also happy to provide a kind of a quick assessment for folks who might be individuals and trying to navigate, is this stress or is this burnout, or
Mm,
maybe it's depression. Happy to provide that as well, because one of the things that I've been conscious of doing is kind of having some sessions where I allow people to kind of think about, what are some small things that I can do in order for me to be able to address what I think might be leading me down the path of burnout. So
mm. Okay, that sounds amazing. Yeah. Okay, and I'll make sure that I put all the links and everything in the show notes. So, and are you on social media at all?
I am, sorry. I
That's
am
okay.
also on, I'm also on LinkedIn. Again, it's all Carolon Donnally. I am literally the only Carolon Donnally out there. And so it's easy for you to find me. Happy to connect with anyone and have
Mm,
a chat with regards to where folks are at.
mm. Yeah, and we had a brief discussion before we started recording about the fact that you're not everywhere on every single platform, and that's quite purposeful.
Absolutely, it really is because I am determined in everything that I do, whether or not it's work with the organizations or work with individuals. I am not interested in burning myself out or the
Mm.
people that I am working with doing this work. And so even when I work with organizations, I say to them specifically, we are going to do this in a burnout resistant way. And I define what that looks like. And then we have conversations along the way around whether or not we're meeting that goal or not. So,
Hmm.
and how we
Amazing.
can shift and adjust in order to kind of do it differently.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much. This was really, really amazing. And I'm sure that the listeners would have gotten so much value. And I'm sure they're going to click that link ASAP to work with you.
Yay. Awesome. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Big pleasure. Hey, I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If so, would you take 30 seconds and leave me a 5-star written review on Apple Podcasts? It would mean so much to me to read your feedback. Also, it would really bless me big if you shared this episode with a fellow leader who might benefit from hearing today's message. And remember, put on the armor of God daily and walk by faith and not by sight. I'll meet you back on Monday for another episode.